Got my Valentine's pictures and I'm all red in the face. I look like an Oompa Loompa. But that is Robert Bodell's fault. Where's Robert? Nobody was getting up and dancing, and then Robert got up and did the Bill Cosby, and he did this move too. I can't quite do it because I'll be embarrassed. But I called it the constipation. He has got some slick dance moves, that brother right there. We had a good time. Carly Giggs showed us how to do the electric slide.
We know why Tabitha married you now.
That's right. I could finally see the appeal. It all made sense. I told Katie to quit coveting her neighbor's husband. She said, I don't think we're in any danger of that. Amen. All right, I won't keep you long today. The message that I have has definitely been burning on my heart, and that's why I told Pastor that I wanted to teach it, but at the same time, it's super complicated. And so I've had to have God kind of unfold it for me. Sometimes he'll bring you like parts of a revelation. You know what I mean? And you're like, oh, that's really good. And then you almost lose part of it, and you got to go back to it again, and you got to say, Father, would you please just finish unfolding this? And two, sometimes when you're dealing with messages like I'm getting ready to preach here in a minute, you can see that there's a real delicacy to it. And so I'm going to ask you this morning just to have your hearts and minds open to what I say. Don't ever read into what I say. That's why I told them, don't you ever read into what I say. I'll tell you what I mean. So I'm going to tell you what I mean this morning, and you're going to take what I say as I say it this morning, right? If you get offended, what do I say? It's your choice, right? Amen. It's your choice. So if you want to be offended today, it's your choice. But none of you are going to do that, right? Because you love me? Okay. So the title of my message today is, it's okay to speak a different language as long as you're saying the same thing. Because that's the important thing, right? We all come from different backgrounds, different cultures, even different church cultures, right? The way that we grew up. Male and female have different perspectives. The generations have different perspectives. And it's okay if we all speak a different language, but we all have to be saying the same thing. If we're not, then that's when Satan can come in and cause division and confusion and wreak havoc, right? And that's the last thing that we want. And so God had pointed out to me an area that has to be spoken about in church, that we deal with sometimes, that's a place of confusion. And I believe that it's mostly a place of confusion between the generations. But it's not that we're saying something different, we're just speaking a different language from each other. Does that make sense? The intention, the heart is the same. So we need to take just a moment and talk about it. Because how many know we have something really special here at this church? Amen. If you don't know, you need to go to some other places and you'll see that we have something really special here. Because what I see happening around our city, and not in every church, but in most churches I would say, is that you either have an older congregation or a younger congregation. Right? But there aren't a lot of churches that have a really good mix. Of course, they're always going to have some young people, but what I'm saying is, to see a church like this that's so multi-generational, and to see the way that we love each other and we work together is a huge deal. And I get to kind of be in that age group right now that's able to be a bridge between the two. So Pastor was joking, we were laughing the other day because he was in a meeting, and I think it was Ron, somebody said, I wish Amy was here to translate. And I was like, are you kidding me? Anyways, but it's true. I get the privilege of being in that age group right now where I still kind of understand where this generation's coming from, right? And where this generation's coming from and where my generation is at. But there's going to come a day when I'm going to be on the other side of that pretty soon, right? And I'm already terrified to get up in front of the youth and speak because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what are they thinking about me? And I find myself being a total dork and trying to use phrases that I shouldn't. I see Pastor do that all the time. Like, cool, man, that's cool, Like the harder he tries, the worse it is. I love it. That's really cool, man. So I catch myself using the word dude a lot and stuff like that. And that's not even their generation, so they think I'm really dorky. So luckily right now it's cute, but it might not be cute for very long. But anyways, we're going to talk about particularly the miscommunication when it comes to us talking about the discipline of God, the chastisement of God. So some of you already, that's kind of striking a chord. Because you know that right now, there is a little bit of a division, and we're going to get into why that is, and what that means for us, why we put different speech to that when we talk about it, and come to an understanding together. I want us to go first to, hold on just a moment. Let's go to John 3:36 first, because we're going to make a little bit of a distinction here so that we all understand exactly what we're talking about here. The book of John, chapter 3 and verse 36 says, "Whoever believes in the Son has eternal life, but whoever rejects the Son will not see life, for God's wrath remains on them." So we are not talking about, I'm not talking about the wrath of God that remains on those that have not come into sonship with Him. Okay? I'm not talking about the death that sin brings, the progression of sin in your life, and the road that you walk down with that, and the punishment that comes along with that when you don't turn to Christ, okay? And give that to Him, let Him cover that with the blood, and find that door to the Father to come into sonship. That's not what I'm talking about. I am talking about when we have accepted Christ into our lives, right? We've applied the blood, and we are walking then as resurrected Christian believers. You didn't catch that?
Yeah.
Amen.
Right? So a lot of times we come to the cross, okay, and then we hang out right there. And we constantly have to apply the work of the cross to our lives. Why is that? Because we haven't been completely transformed yet. Because if we are completely transformed, and we become Christians, and we become Christ-like, and we become sons and daughters, what happens? We walk in resurrection power. We get to the other side of the cross.
Right.
That brings us into a life, and a life that's more abundant, right? And a life of blessing through the Father, and an understanding of who we are as sons and daughters of Christ, okay? So I'm not talking about people that hang out at the cross either. We're talking about godly discipline for His sons and daughters, and we're going to talk about what that looks like and what that means, okay? All right, so I want you to turn to Hebrews 12, 5 through 11. Hebrews 12, verse 5 through 11 says, "And have you completely forgotten this word of encouragement that addresses you as a father addresses his son? It says, 'My son, do not make light of the Lord's discipline, and do not lose heart when He rebukes you.'" So does the Lord discipline us?
Yes.
Does He rebuke us?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Because the Lord disciplines the one who He loves. And He chastens everyone He accepts as His son. So it's a privilege. "Endure hardship as discipline. God is treating you as children. For what children are not disciplined by their father?" I know a lot that are nowadays. "If you are not disciplined and everyone undergoes discipline, then you are not legitimate, not true sons and daughters at all. Moreover, we have all had human fathers who disciplined us, and we respected them for it." How many of you guys had a good daddy that when he punished you it was not out of anger, but it was out of love? Raise your hand. Yeah?
Right.
Okay. "How much more should we submit to the Father of spirits and live?
Right.
They disciplined us for a little while as they thought best, but God disciplines us for good, in order that we may share in His holiness. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful later on. However, it produces a harvest of righteousness." I want that. "And peace for those who have been trained by it." Amen? So why is it that when we talk about discipline, which by the way, the word discipline comes from a Latin root, which means to instruct, right? To guide, to teach, to discipline. It comes from the word disciple. Okay?
Right.
So we can't look at it like it's just punishment.
Sure.
Why is it that different people apply different speech to it whenever we're talking about the discipline of the Lord? And especially, why is there a difference in the way the generations describe that discipline? And sometimes, especially this younger generation, gets wounded and hurt by the way that the older generation sometimes describes the discipline of the Lord. The reason why I believe is because generationally, our earthly fathers have changed. I think that's a big part of it. Now, these are blanket statements that I'm making, so don't take this to be fact for everybody. But our earthly fathers have changed. So nowadays, you watch a daddy with his kids, okay? And he's like, you're going to time out, right? You're going to chill out, you're going to time out. And they'll bend down and they talk to the kids a little bit more. So why are you acting this way? We've got to get straightened up. You're embarrassing me, right? And they try to reason a little bit more with their kids. It's the parenting style of the day. Right. It's what's done. It's what's accepted a little bit more. But from my generation older, if we misbehaved, Dad said, "You're going to get it after church," right? And we knew that we were going to get it after church. Now, did that mean that he was being unloving with me? Does that mean that he was disciplining me in a bad way? Well, I mean, some people would say now that getting a whipping is abuse, whatever. But no, it didn't mean that he was doing anything bad. It was just the way it was done. It was different. Right. But he was still my lovey-dovey daddy that even when he gave me a whipping, I knew because he told me this is going to hurt him more than it's going to hurt me, right? That it actually hurt him more than it hurt me. I didn't buy it, but I knew it because he told me it's going to hurt me more than it's going to hurt you. So, anyways, I believe that's part of it because we see our Heavenly Father through the lens that we saw our earthly father. Right. And so for some of you, you never knew your father. You never had discipline from a father. And so maybe that's really kind of messed up for you. What does that look like? How does that work? It's all pretty much metaphoric anyways, right? The speech that we put to that. So when pastor talks about that, or mama, okay, you might hear them say, God wasn't going to let me get by with that, right? He was not going to let me get by with my mess, pastor will say. That's right. Right? He's going to, you're out of here, you're in trouble, you're not going to get by with that, right? And that speech to the younger generation is like, whoa, that's not who God is. And I'm telling some of my friends that we talk about this stuff, I'm not going to call you out, don't feel uncomfortable. Anyways, some of the younger generation, we talk about this stuff, and so don't think I'm going to call you out and be like, you're there. Anyways. So the younger generation says, ew, God's not like that. But the heart of what pastor's saying is the same thing that a younger person might express as this. So hear me. A younger person might say, so God told me, we're going to wait a little bit, right? We're going to sit down. We're going to reason this out, right? They're saying the same thing. One is not harsher than the other. It's all discipline. It's all teaching, instructing, guiding along a child out of love. If I love my kid and my child is trying to run out in the street all the time, I'm not going to say, oh, well, there's grace for that. Right? Grace will pay the hospital bills. No, I'm not going to do that. My parenting style was, you do it again, I'm going to whoop your butt because I don't want you to get killed out in the road. But that's me loving my child and teaching my child and wanting my child to live. Bill Johnson said this, he said, God's discipline, I love this, God's discipline is so that his blessings won't kill us. And I thought about my kids starting to drive, right? If my kids have not been raised up in the way that they should go, they're gonna wreck their car. There you go. Thanks for that, right? Anyways, no. They're gonna be completely irresponsible with this good blessing, this good gift that I've given them, right? They're gonna be out running around with a bunch of other kids in the car, drinking and smoking and partying, and they can get killed, right? So God's discipline a lot of times is so that the good blessings that he pours out on us won't physically or mostly spiritually bring it into us because we're not mature enough to handle it. Okay? But I believe with all my heart that's why we put different speech to it. Discipline is not necessarily just because of sin. And that's the other thing I think that gets lost in translation. Because a lot of times I think the younger generation, they're really over this idea of constantly being punished for sin. Do you want to know why that is? God's, number one, it's not godly. When we come to Jesus, he took our sins to the cross, right? And took that upon himself. But God is doing a different thing on this earth right now. Amen. And it's not just with the younger generation, it's with all of us. There was a time period when ministers could get up in the pulpit and they could say, You're going to burn in hell if you don't get this right. And people would run to the altar and cry. You do that nowadays, you clear the house real fast.
Yeah.
Right? So why is that? Is that because they don't have a fear or reverence for the Lord? They don't want any discipline? They don't want any punishment? No. It's not like that at all. When a baby's little, you have to discipline it quite a bit, right? Because they don't know any better. They're doing a lot of things. They're getting into stuff all the time. They're trying to stick their finger in the light socket, right? They're putting peanut butter in their sister's hair. When kids are younger, they're doing all kinds of things that they need a lot of discipline for. But when kids get older, things are a little bit different. Especially when they start to reach adulthood. And we talk a little bit more, right? And we try to reason together a little bit more, right? God is expediting things on this earth.
Amen.
Because he's soon to come. And he wants mature Christians that get beyond the cross and into walking in resurrection, full power life. Not to say that didn't exist on the earth before, so this is where I need you to hear me. I'm telling you, with all of us, he's doing a new thing. And I was listening to the book of Ephesus the other day, and you know, the church of Ephesians, out of all the churches, they were the ones that had it most together. So I'd like to think that if we were one of the biblical churches, we would be the church of Ephesus, right? Anyways, probably not. I'd hate to guess. Anyways, but the church of Ephesus, out of all the letters that Paul had to write, they had it the most together. But one thing he did say to them was, I need you to mature quickly. Like, we can't tolerate just babes in the woods, because then we got to watch over you, right? And walk along with you, holding your hand all the time, because you're prone to attack. Now, I love you all, and I love even the weakest among you. But if you want to know my heart, it would be that you mature quickly.
Right.
Because the quicker you mature, the more time and attention we can give to other babies coming in. Right? And so, anyways, I think that that's overall what God's doing on the earth right now. He is having to expedite our growth. And so a lot of these young people that are coming in, or new Christians, baby Christians, let's put it that way, of all ages coming in, are kind of expedited quickly into this understanding of what it means to be a son and daughter of Christ. And that's a beautiful thing.
Amen.
It really is. And I feel like the more that we concentrate on that, Pastor has done a really great job teaching a whole series on sonship here. The more we understand that concept that we're sons and daughters of Christ and all that that means for us, the more we can clear up all of our broken, and as Pastor Tyner says, stinking thinking, and start to live in a fullness. John the Baptist, when he came to earth, he had a commission to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, the hearts of the children to the fathers, right? And so let me go back before I touch on this to what I was talking about with discipline. Discipline isn't just for sin. Discipline can mean all sorts of disobedience. So how many of you know that I can not be in sin, but sure be disobedient? Sure. Right? And sometimes it's even unintentional. But I can walk outside of the will of God because I'm walking in my flesh. And I'm not staying in tune to what God wants. When I can tell my kids are getting distant, I know it's time to maybe give them a grounding and make them stay home more. That's mean, isn't it? But I make them come and be around me more, right? So when my kids are acting weird, something's off, I'm like, you need to spend more time with me. So Kelsey, not too long ago, I was like, you're staying home. Because she started being distant from me, being a little bit weird. She's gone all the time. I'm like, that's it. You're going to call off work a little bit. You're going to be home. We're going to spend some time together. And so a lot of times, God will just stop and get our attention because that's part of his loving discipline for us. He needs time. He needs proximity to be able to instruct us, to be able to mold us, to be able to change us, right? But John the Baptist, when he came on the scene, it was his job to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, the hearts of the children to the fathers. And why was that? I believe that it was so that after Christ ascended back to heaven, that this spark that was lit, this flame that was lit, would continue on until his coming. Because we need each other.
Right.
That's why I'm teaching this message. We need each other.
Yeah.
We need our elders to pass down their wisdom to us.
Yes, we do.
We need to be able to look at them and say, if Larry and Janice can make it this far out of everything they've been through, I can make it. Right? See what I mean? We need each other. And it's not just that the younger generation needs the older generation. the older generation needs the younger generation, because sometimes the younger generation's getting a new, fresh revelation that they need, right?
That's right.
And we have to be humble enough with one another for that to work. We can't get puffed up in who we are. Well, you know, I don't want the baggage from the older generation. And I tell you, there are things on my life that I need to break off. Thaddeus and I were talking about that the other day, because of the way that we've been raised and some things that we were raised in that were just condemnation or strict, not by our parents. I'm talking about just the church culture that we were in.
Right.
You got to shake that stuff off, right? And you got to move beyond some of that into a revelation of how God views you, how God sees you. So I'm not talking about that, but I think this younger generation kind of gets an idea sometimes we don't want the baggage from the older generation. Well, you unpack that baggage and you look at it, and there's all this wealth. All this wealth. I feel like sometimes the older generation looks at the younger generation and thinks, oh, sloppy grace, and all they want to sing about is He loves us, and He knows me, and reckless love. They just want to sing all these love songs and float around on a cloud in sloppy grace, and that's not true either. That's not true either. But these kids, this younger generation, and even some of you older ones that have really caught a hold of this, you understand that, and we've talked about this a lot recently, I feel like many of you, most of you in this congregation really get it, that you can't ever be good enough.
That's it.
You could never earn it anyways if you tried, right? And so He's certainly not going to be able to give you enough discipline to make you good, right? He has made you worthy. You have to accept that. You have to come in. And once you're in close enough proximity with Him, like I sang about this morning as we were singing today, and I was singing about how awe-inspired His amazing grace and His amazing love was, it just welled up in me. I want to be more like You. See, that's what happens. They get so close to Him because they understand who they are as sons and daughters of God, that they get so close to Him. They see how beautiful He is in His holiness, because that's the true definition of beauty, is holiness. And they see how beautiful He is in His holiness, and they say, I want to be that right there. That's who I want to be. I want to be more like Him. Amen? And I can't earn it, and I can't ever deserve it, but this is what I want to be. And when we catch a hold of that, all that condemnation that we used to carry and all that shame is gone. I feel sorry for people that are stuck in religions that's all they focus on. It's the condemnation and the judgment of God. Like I said last week, they see God the Father as this big imposing figure up on His throne that just can't wait to get down and give them a punishment when they're bad. It says a lot about how you saw the earthly leadership in your life. Because that's not what He wants. He's cheering for you.
Come on.
He's singing over you. He's saying, look, that's my child. He wants your success. Your success is His success. You're a reflection of His glory here on the earth. What you say, what you do reflects Him. Of course He wants your success. Of course He's not just sitting around waiting on your failure. When you become a parent, that's one of the really awesome gifts that God's given me in my life to help me have more of an understanding of who He is. Was He made me a parent. He gave me kids. And when that happened to me, I really got it then. I understood what it meant. And the older my kids get, and the more they're not just under my control, they're kind of becoming their own human beings, the more I understand grace. The more I understand what He feels.
Right.
When my kids mess up, they know it. They don't like it.
Right.
They're not happy that they messed up.
Right.
My heart breaks for them. And even though I know sometimes that I've got to bring discipline to them for that, or help guide them through that, I'm not mad at them.
No.
I'm not wanting them out of my life.
Right.
Nothing they could ever do would be bad enough to do that.
Right.
And nothing you could ever do would be bad enough for God to feel that way about you.
That's right.
And because it's the price of the priceless, like we talked about, because it's so beautiful, we'd give everything for it, even though we could never pay enough to earn it, which is an awesome thing. I feel like through time, there's going to be more and more things like this that Satan's going to try to plant to bring division. You know, he was very successful about it, I don't know, 100, 150 years ago, when he was able to just take denominations and just segment them and segment them and segment them and segment them, right?
Right.
And so what's happening is you've got churches like Tabernacle of Praise that said, no, this isn't right. We're non-denominational. You love Jesus, you come in and worship with us. And let me tell you, I'm sure Satan wasn't happy about that.
That's right.
That was probably one of the biggest slaps in the face he's gotten in a long time. God gave me this beautiful vision of something that I want to do. I'm so excited about it. When something comes from God, you're like, oh, I don't think anybody's ever had that idea. I'm so excited. You know what I mean? Because you can think of stuff yourself, but it's always like, oh, somebody's already done that.
Yeah.
But he gives you something and you're like, it's like you got a little secret, put it in my pocket. I don't tell anybody else because they'll steal mine. So anyways, but God gave me this revelation of this thing the other day, and I'm like, that's so cool. He said, I want you to go to the city and take up a Macedonian offering. So what that means is, in 2 Corinthians, Paul's talking to the church at Corinth, and he says, Macedonia, by the way, did a really great job on their offering the other day. They gave of themselves. They just poured out. People who didn't have gave. They gave way more even than what they were supposed to. That offering was not for Paul, right? And he makes that clear. He's like, I want y'all to know this is above board. This isn't for me. That offering was for the poor Christians.
Right.
So I know of a few churches in the city that do awesome work. Like they feed the homeless, they have soup kitchens, and their buildings are falling apart. Little bitty churches. But if they were to have to move out of where they are, they would lose their contact with all that area. Unless God could find them a place right in that same place again. So I thought, how cool would it be to go to the bigger churches all around Muncie, or any church, it don't have to be big, any church, and take up a Macedonian offering for the poor Christians that are doing a good work. Not even tell them, just show up with the check, right?
Yes.
How cool would that be? When we do stuff like that, I'm sure it's a huge slap in the face to Satan, because he had this whole agenda to separate us through denomination, right? Make us angry with each other over stupid things, and stupid things that we can never even know anyways. Like, who really actually understands the Godhead? I don't, do you? I don't, do you? Because I don't think any of us really got it. And if you say that you do, you might be this much arrogant, just that much. Because we all need to confess it's a mystery. The Bible says it's a mystery for a reason, because it's a mystery, right? There are things that won't be revealed until we get into heaven, so we've allowed all these stupid things to disconnect us. So now that we're all coming back together, Satan's like, what could I do? What could I do to divide them again? So he plants these little seeds of discord.
Right.
When really, we all have the same heart. We all know the same God. We all feel the same grace. But when we hear things worded a little bit different way because we're seeing through a different filter, it feels really gross. And so my purpose today is not just to clear that up, but to also, if some of us are out of line with how we view the discipline of God, if some of you think that he's a big God up there wanting to punish you for everything that you do, hopefully after this message you'll understand it's a little bit different than that. And those of you who think that you can just get by with everything and God's not going to try to teach and instruct and give you good discipline, you're wrong too. We got to come into an understanding together. So how do we then bring the hearts of the fathers to the children and the hearts of the children to the fathers? How does that happen? I tell you the way that it happens. When a dad spends time with his kids, there's nothing like it. When dad says, hey, come on out, I'm changing the oil in the car, right? So when Frank says to my kids, come on guys, I'm gonna clean my gun, or we're gonna go hunting, we're country kids, so we do all kinds of that stuff. Or I'm gonna work on the van today, whatever. When he says, hey boys, come on out, I'm gonna teach you. They're like, oh, Dad. But once they get out there and they spend time with him, I can see their relationship growing closer. And I see them wanting to be more like Dad. Okay? And I see them when he's gone then and they got to take over and do something like that. So we have this raccoon like ravishing our chicken coop. I mean, dead chicken carcasses everywhere, right? This thing, I'm like, this thing has got to be huge. and we see the paw prints in the snow, and it's like raccoon on steroids. I mean, this thing, like the space between the tracks, I'm like, what in the world is this thing? Mutant raccoon coming to kill all my chickens. So anyways, and it's our fault. We've gotten lazy with our little door that we close at night for them to go in and out of, because for so long they weren't under attack, which there's a word in that. That'll preach right there. Anyways, so we got a little lazy with that, allowing this gigantic fat raccoon to come in and get some of our chickens. Then he got really bold and started coming before we could even get the door closed on them at night. And so we were down, I mean, some of you guys know we had a bunch of chickens. We're down to like 4 or 5 chickens. We had set up snares for this dude, everything. Thane said, that's it. Because Thane's my little farmer boy. He's the one who watches over the animals. He's got a big heart for them. That's it, I'm killing this thing. So I'm like, all right. I see Peppo coming out in him. So he says, I'm going out with the gun tonight, Mom. I'm like, of course, the mommy inside me says, oh. But he's been through gun safety class and all those things. My kids are taught to use that responsibly. So he goes out and he sits in the dark, right? And he gets this thing. 1 shot to the head, gets it. Gives it a quick, clean death. That's what we like. We don't like to be mean.
Right.
People on YouTube right now will probably get all kinds of hate comments for animal cruelty. Anyways, though, he says, Mom, it was huge. And he's so excited, he's so proud. But I could see his papa and his dad all in him, right? And it made me so happy because they had been in proximity to him.
Right.
His heart was turned to them, and his heart wanted to be more like them.
Right.
His heart wants to be with them,
Right.
right? That's how we turn the hearts of the children to the fathers and the fathers to the children. Because let me tell you something, it's not the children's responsibility
That's right.
to do that.
Amen.
It will naturally happen when the fathers are around the children. Now, what happens to the fathers as they are with their children? They also want to be with their kids more. They learn things from their children, right? They get a sense of accomplishment, teaching something, passing it on to the next generation, right? And they have, here's the most important part, a better understanding. When I see fathers who aren't interested in being around their kids, they have no understanding of what it's like in that day and age to be a teenager, right? To go through the things that they go through, to walk through the things that they have to walk through. They don't understand why their kids are acting that way. Have you ever heard that? I don't know why they're acting that way. Well, you probably know if you spend more time with them, right? So what happens is there's a greater understanding that's opened up in that relationship too. When this thing gets right in this church, and we already love each other, but when we start to walk in true discipleship across the generations,
Yeah.
I love it when I smile like that. Leanne gets really excited too. So that's when revival can be sustained.
Yes. Yes.
And it can grow. There's a connection, right?
Yeah.
And so I want to see that happen more and more here. Those of you, Brother Larry's our head elder, some of you that are on the elder board, some of you that are pillars in our church for years, find somebody to connect with.
Right.
Share with them, because here's the beautiful thing, this is what I've been trying to get to, that happens when all that happens. We have that understanding that can flow. Revival can be sustained till the coming of the Lord, because we're passing down knowledge and we're sharing revelation, and that connection's there, and we're making the devil mad, which is always fun. Amen? The beautiful thing that happens is that we will really begin to understand the heart of a person.
Yes.
So let me explain what I mean by that, because it's much deeper than the way I just put it. When I get in a fight with Frank, which almost never happens, or anytime I have a misunderstanding with somebody, God has revealed a way to me to be able to negotiate that problem with them. Okay? And the way that He's revealed to me to do that is by putting myself in that person's position and reminding myself of who that person is and what their heart is. Okay? If you do that with somebody, you will find very often that that offense will fall right off of you. Because you remember, that person loves me. That person is a good person. That person would never intentionally try to act out to hurt me. Right?
Right.
And so when you look at what they've done, no matter how ugly it is, through that lens, that offense is broken off of you because you understand the heart of what they just said. What they just said may have sounded really ugly, but I know their heart, right? What Frank may have said to me may have really hurt my feelings, but I know his heart and I know he's a good husband. And I know that he's for me and not against me, right? So when our leadership or whoever it is says something from the pulpit that doesn't compute to us, and we say, oh, what was that? We can say, wait a minute. I know the heart of that person. I know the heart of Pastor Tyner, and I know where he's coming from, and I know that he understands the love of a father. And so now I can look at what he said through that lens and know that he's just put different speech to the same thing that I know too. Do you understand what I'm saying? And we let offense fall off, and we come into understanding.
Amen.
Right? So now I want you to all call Pastor Tyner all hours of the night and really get to know him. Say, Pastor, I want to hang out with you. I'm going to go on these DNR runs with you. I want to be a son or a daughter of you. No. Seriously though, spend time. This Valentine's banquet was so much fun, and we got to, Brad said we should do this more often. We should get together and just begin to fellowship and understand the heart of one another. So let's all stand this morning.